everyone. I'm Shilo, President of Comprehensive Wealth Management today, hosting the new rules of cybersecurity, what every household should know. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really quickly, for those of you who are guests with us today and unfamiliar with CWM, we are a boutique Pacific Northwest wealth management firm with the goal of really helping our clients make mindful and sustainable choices when it comes to their investment and lifestyle goals. And we do that through really high touch client service. We do what we call a planning first mentality, which is really in-depth financial planning with our clients, with the specialists that we have in-house, so that they can make intentional choices about where to go next with their financial goals. And as technology has accelerated more and more, and the reason that we are hosting this webinar today is that cybersecurity has now become a pretty tremendous threat and is an imperative part of your financial ecosystem. This is something all of us have to start at home to make good choices and take good actions to protect ourselves from those bad actors out there. So I'd love to introduce our speaker today, Tim Villano of Artemis Security, who is a cybersecurity expert. This is what he does absolutely every day, and would love to get him to give us kind of his up-to-date tips on how we can protect ourselves at home. So with that, Tim, turning it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. And thanks everyone for joining. I really appreciate it. I'm not going to read the details of my bio, but I'll just say that for about 20 years, I've been working with financial services firms. I work with hundreds of firms, and I think more firms need to do this type of training. I've worked with comprehensive wealth management for about 5 years now, and addressing clients is an important part of the business. Just because we see so much client breach, we see so much business email compromise, and I think this is a good idea. It should be regular practice. So my hat's off to Comprehensive for doing this. I'll try to move quickly through the slides, especially the top half of our slideshow, just so that we can spend a little bit more time talking about artificial intelligence. But we'll move along quickly. If you have questions, please submit them, and we'll try to get them to them as soon as possible. So first thing we're going to do is talk a little bit about what the federal government viewpoint is, and we'll also cover some common scams that you'll no doubt encounter. We'll talk a little bit about social media basics and how to secure your interaction there. And then, like I said, we'll talk about artificial intelligence and deep fakes and some of the real threats that are becoming more common. And what I always say is, we're really pouring gasoline on the concept of social engineering out here with AI. In other words, AI is expanding exponentially our concerns. So the slide you're looking at right now is the CISA site, the Cybersecurity Information Security Agency. And what it's really telling us is that the federal government says we should be on red alert, whether we're corporations or we're individuals or we're families. And I think the notable thing here is that the federal government has put out guidance for families. It's not complicated. It's simple. It's basic, good advice, like putting multi-factor or two-factor authentication in place, making sure that your systems, your computers, your mobile devices are updated, being very careful before you click links, especially in communications you're not sure of. Make sure you use strong passwords. And interesting, the federal government is actually recommending that you use a password manager. So if you don't, I think that's a good idea. It's something good to talk with your family about. And I'll keep coming back to that notion, but I force my family to use a password manager. They may not like me very much, but we do it anyway. Okay. Also, the federal government for about 3 years now has actually requested that financial services firms and other critical infrastructure firms train their people on deep fakes. And what deep fakes are synthetic video, voice, and images that are created by AI or artificial intelligence. And this type of fraud is growing very rapidly, especially as AI capabilities improve. And as we go forward, we'll talk about this. But just so you know, the federal government thinks this is an important issue. They've told us all to train on it. We've talked with people at Comprehensive about this, and I think it's very good they're letting you know, because I'm sure that you're going to encounter this, and you're going to be encountering these type of synthetic deep fakes and fraud attempts as we go forward. So just a couple of common scams here that you should be aware of because people are falling for these all the time. But this tech support scam, a major company like Microsoft or your computer manufacturer or a software manufacturer reaching out to you and saying, "Hi, this is Microsoft. We want to help you secure your system or secure your operating system, and we just have some steps that you need to take." Now, I know this because I have someone close to me who fell for one of these scams. And let me tell you, when you really need tech support, you won't be able to get anyone on the phone. You'll have to chase them. So you should be wary of anybody reaching out to you, offering tech support, or saying that we're calling you, reaching out, cold calling you to help you secure your systems.
And
Anytime,
Tim, I'll piggyback on that,
sure.
we talked about this last week. No one is going to call you to offer to protect your financial ecosystem as well. And we have a client who was compromised just 2 weeks ago because someone called offering to help her put in place a whole cybersecurity protection layer. They got her social security number, phone numbers, family members, you name it. And so just keep in mind that if someone's reaching out to you, hang up. You can find that provider at their credible line, but don't just give a stranger all of your confidential information when they call soliciting you.
Great. And I appreciate the example, and we can offer multiple examples. I also want you to know that when you're surfing on your computer, you might get a pop-up window that says your computer is infected. Call this number. Let us help you run this antivirus software. That is without question or most likely a scam. You should simply close that window, X out that window, reboot your system. In all likelihood, that will go away. However, if it doesn't, then it's something to seek help about. Billing scams, we see them all the time. There'll be a couple of examples here, but we've renewed your subscription to antivirus is the most common scam. And call this number if you don't recognize this message or reach out to us. All of these type of billing scams are seeking additional information from you. So whether it's a phone call, whether it's an email or a text, be very careful about that. We've renewed your subscription and you say, "What? I didn't even know I had a subscription to this." So, take a pass on that. And the other thing I would say is anytime you have bad guys or fraudsters coming at you and saying, with some urgency, "We've broken into your computer. We have access to everything. We have your information," really coming at you and threatening you or, attempting to frighten you. Many people are not tech experts, so this type of attack works all the time. But anytime you get that kind of urgency, you can look in the other direction. Do not believe that.
I'll add on to that too, Tim, that they're very good at using your human nature against you. So creating that sense of urgency. There was another example recently with a family member actually where they were working to sell something on Facebook Marketplace. And the person wrote back and said, "Well, I want to send you this transaction via Zelle, but they're telling me you need to do something first. Here's the phone number to call." And when they picked up the phone number to call, it was actually a fraudster trying to get their bank account information and misrepresenting that they had to somehow do a transaction first. I got on the other line with Zelle and said, "I think this is a scam. I have a family member on the phone." And they said, "That is absolutely a scam. Hang up the phone. This is a known thing that's going on." So when people are putting that undue pressure on you, it's okay to not be nice in those instances. You can be polite, you can hang up, but don't give into those pressures.
Thank you for the example. Billing and shipping scam, there's a delivery waiting for you. All we need you to do is click this link and fill out this form or help us complete the delivery. Very common. I think we might have another example of that as well. Secure file shares. And what I mean from that is you receive an email that says, "We're sharing a file with you. If you click this link, we'll be able to deliver this file to you." Anytime you have a question about who's sending you that link, or if it's not clearly identified. If there's no identifier, just we're sharing this with you, please click to download. You should not go anywhere near that. So be very careful about those attempts to stated attempts to share files with you. Okay, so the DocuSign scam has been around for a long time, and that's because people see the documents as important. They want to sign, they have to sign a contract. They're signing something related to billing. But I think the most important thing to understand is that if you receive an email that is purporting to be from DocuSign or a DocuSign document, who's the sender? Are they really trusted? Do you know who they are? Is the email from a legitimate address like DocuSign.net or DocuSign.com? Anytime you have a question about not recognizing the source of that email or contract, or if you're not expecting it, it's coming to you out of the blue and you had no idea. The thing you want to do is not engage with that, not click any links, pick up the phone and call the number of record for whoever you're speaking with. Whether it's a financial services company, you can call the number of record on a statement or call a credit card company from the credit card or the number on the back of that credit card. This has been very successful because people see there's urgency here. But I would say anytime you're not expecting something, I would not engage with it. And like I've said, people take advantage of the concept that people are not tech aware or tech experts. Not everyone is a tech expert. So I mentioned this notion of antivirus. It's rampant. The concept of if you don't renew your antivirus, all of a sudden you might find that your system is vulnerable. And so what you're looking at is a really common scam. This one's dropped into my personal email box several times. And you'll notice if you take a look at the return address, which is always a good idea, that this is from a Gmail account. So this is an email purporting to be from McAfee. It's an invoice. It looks somewhat official and looks like the images are official, but the email is to a Gmail, not a formal domain. And notice also that this email is blasted out to a list, a number of people, which is the way these scams work. It's just a volume game. We send this out to thousands of people. A certain number of people will engage with it, call us, give information. So do yourself a favor, don't interact with this. If you're uncertain about what services you actually have on your machine, talk to someone about that. We see this all the time. I had someone who contacted me about a week ago about something like this. The first question they asked is, "Do we have McAfee on our systems?" And the answer is no. So that's the first thing. But be careful of any communication you're receiving from purported to be from antivirus companies. Okay, and so the advent of text message scams, it's only getting worse and worse, and I'm not sure how you all deal with it, but I mostly have my family members, my close friends, close clients that I communicate, and anytime I'm receiving business information via text, I really don't like to see it. So there's tons of billing scams coming across text messaging. We've processed your payment. Please contact us to make sure that we can keep your service going. Things like that. We have some kind of reward for you, or gift cards or e-cards. So anytime you're receiving these kind of representations within a text, I would say, please don't fall for that. Don't engage with that. Here's one from the U.S. Postal Service. We'd love to complete this delivery to you, but we need you to click this link and help us complete this. Well, be very careful. Don't click unidentified links. And my advice for most people that will just keep you out of trouble is don't click links that come to you in text messages. If they're from a source where you actually have a service, like say your internet service or that previous slide with Spectrum, I would say hang up, don't engage with that. Reach out to Spectrum directly, to discuss your account formally. and do not engage with text messages. And anything that sounds too good to be true, as I've said, probably is. So do your best to avoid clicking links within text messages. Also, non-specific outreach, people purporting to be friends. I still receive these all the time, and so do many, many people that I work with. It's been a long time. How are you? Or would love to catch up. Get in touch with me. Anyone who doesn't identify themselves, this is a bad idea these days. It's a bad idea for you to send a text message, where you don't identify yourself if you're reaching out to someone that you don't normally communicate with. So if you don't recognize the number, the source, simply don't engage with these non-specific texts. It's usually someone just trying to, number one, confirm your identity. And number two, carry that conversation forward in order to try and gain some information from you. So this slide I put together because my son lost his phone at college, and he reached out to me and said, "Dad, I lost my phone. What should I do?" Well, the first thing you always do is contact your network provider to have your service turned off. So whether it's AT&T, Verizon, or some other company, reach out to them. If you're an iPhone user, you can go into your Apple account in an iCloud. You can mark a device as lost. When you mark a device as lost, it flashes the number on the screen. And that's what's happened here in the case of my son. Flash the number here on the screen. And the bad guy then texted a message saying, "I've got your phone. I have everything here. I'm trying to help you. Click this link to remove the service, and that way I'll help you out." And the truth of the matter is, what they're really trying to do is just get at the phone so they can reuse it. So I would say this is another case where don't interact with people who are representing that they have information from you, that they have a lost device, etc. The best thing you can do is go to your network provider, turn it off, and also familiarize yourself with the settings in iCloud. And while you're at it, I would also say, make sure that you have multi-factor authentication in place for your Apple accounts and your iCloud accounts. Very important. There's a lot of breach taking place there. So make sure two-factor authentication is in place for your iCloud accounts.
And Tim, along the same lines of iPhones,
Mhm.
what do you recommend? So many people are fond of the biometrics or the looking at your phone with your face and having it unlock everything. But for a lot of us, these phones are computers now. They have bank account information and all sorts of things. What are your recommendations with securing the device itself when it is on your person?
Well, there's a great convenience in using those types of factors, whether it's a thumbprint or face image or things like that. So I don't think there's any rolling back these factors, these security factors that we'll all be using for convenience. I prefer not to use them. Anytime you're setting up a phone to use your facial image or a thumbprint, there's a token that's created from that could actually, if a very inventive or high-powered hacker could actually get at that, I prefer to use a code, a six-digit code to secure your phone. Four digits is not enough. It can be brute forced. Computers can now address that very quickly, so the minimum would be six digits. But it raises the question, please make sure your phone is protected by a code so that if you don't, so that if you drop it, if you lose it, or if it's stolen, someone just doesn't have open access to your information. iPhones, which is what most of us have, are very secure. And when you enter a PIN or when you set up a PIN to access an iPhone, it also encrypts that device. So if it's lost and someone doesn't have that PIN, there's very good encryption in place. So I prefer to use the basics, a lengthy code, a minimum six-digit code. There's no turning back using your fingerprint or your face, and that is certainly better than nothing. That's the way I would look at it. Now, the Wild West of the Internet of Things, all of the different devices that we can connect to our Wi-Fi in our homes, This is becoming very common. Yes, I do have some vacuum banging around here at my feet, and you can put anything online these days. You can put a toothbrush onto your Wi-Fi network. So what I would do is try to resist using too many of these devices. But the real problem is not necessarily the device itself, it's setting them up. These devices will have a default username and password. There's usually a web page that you can log into for these devices. And it's similar to protecting your email. You have to set up a unique username and password, take these devices out of default mode, and make sure two-factor authentication is set up for accessing uh, the browser-based access for these devices. That's where people really go wrong. Then hackers get to their accounts online and can actually access these devices. Important to keep these devices updated. So if you're actually going to use them and you're going to have an app on your phone that helps you direct your Roomba around the house, make sure that periodically you open that app and make sure it's updated. For myself, I prefer to put these devices onto a separate wireless network, not onto the trusted wireless network that I work with. I just don't want these devices on the same network as my important systems and my data. So something else to keep in mind, if you work with someone who is tech savvy or who can help you set up another network, I don't have any problem. This is something else that we're not going to be able to turn back, the use of these devices that connect to our Wi-Fi networks. But just if you're going to buy them, make sure you take the time to set them up properly. So a few notions here. Now we're gonna move into artificial intelligence and some of the capabilities and also some of the protections in place. I don't like to walk through these slides step by step, but I'm going to take us a few of these like this. Um, AI capabilities are great at cloning and reproducing your voice. So you should know that anytime you receive a call from an unknown number, if you pick that up and no one is saying hello, you don't have any message there, it's just dead space, you're best to just hang up that phone. What you don't want to do is say hello, who's this, who's calling, and provide your voice print. There are bots and AI agents that are making these calls, and if you pick up the phone and acknowledge with your voice, the first thing you do is go into a list of, your number's been acknowledged. They're correct about your phone number, your mobile device, and now they can come back to you for another scam. So be very careful about that. And as it says here, in as little as 3 seconds, your voice can sort of be printed, possibly reproduced. So my main advice here is to protect your voice. Don't give it up. Um, I really don't like to answer numbers where I don't know who's calling. If there's not a proper caller ID or if it's not from a known source, I prefer to let that go to message and hear what's being said there. And we're all have so many of these calls coming in that I would advise that you do that. You set up your phone and let calls from an unknown source go to message. And please, the first thing you're supposed to do these days, if you pick up the phone from a number that you don't know, you're supposed to say nothing. Let the caller initiate the communication. Um, AI writes very good emails these days. It doesn't make the mistakes, the simple grammatical mistakes and spelling mistakes that it used to. So just be aware of that. If you have information out there, your birth date, account numbers, things like that, you can receive a very convincing email, saying that we're from a source, we're from Chase Bank, or we're from your financial services firm, and you want to be very careful about that. Um, and just like the voice capabilities, video is getting quite advanced. And if people are in video on YouTube or on social media, video of that person can be reproduced. So it could be the case that a trusted person that I come to you with help for cybersecurity, and I am also an AI generation based on video that someone's made. So be careful, be skeptical about what you're hearing, and never again. The key point I think is never give up information, or especially authentication information. Again, like we said, and Shiloh also mentioned, often these calls are going to manufacture urgency. They're trying to pressure you somehow. I constantly see scams where, people are purporting to be from a bank and saying, we need to access your accounts have been attacked and we need to secure them. And what we're going to do for you is wire money from your current accounts to another account. Be very wary of that. Anybody reaching out to you and saying, you've had a security problem and we need to help you with that. That is, again, the case where you want to take that communication, hang up the phone, and then reach out through a number of record from your statement, from the back of your credit card, whatever it may be. But beware of any call that's coming into you saying, this is urgent. We need to help you with something. Um, I've mentioned that these attacks are increasing exponentially, and whether it's phishing emails with malicious attachments or whether it's ransomware attacks, the volume is just incredible. It's the way these things are growing. So no question that you're probably receiving phishing email within your personal email or business email as well. So these are things you really have to be careful about and very skeptical these days, and an understanding that even communication from a trusted person can be bad. Um, and as the final point says, AI does learn from this communication. Like I said, they'll learn from your voice. They'll gather information. All of this is information gathering for a potential future attack. Multi-factor authentication has to be turned on. If AI agents have access to your email address and a password is breached, the only thing that's stopping them from accessing an account would be whether or not you have multi-factor authentication turned on. Make sure you have lengthy, complex passwords or passphrases in place. This helps stop brute force attacks where an AI bot or agent can actually roll through variations and attempt to crack your password, something to be very careful about.
And Tim, let me break in for a second there. We've got a couple
Sure.
of great questions that
Yep.
have come up about best practices when using a password manager. What are
Mhm.
some of the different managers that you might recommend?
Sure. I can tell you, we use LastPass. All of these companies are going to have had security problems in the past. But what's important to us is how they handle that security problem, how transparent they are, and what are their solutions. Um, there are all kinds of solutions these days. Um, Apple has uh, Apple has their own password manager. There are password managers embedded in browsers that you may work with. That's okay as well. The point is really that you want to use an application that doesn't have your passwords everywhere or creating the same password for multiple sources. And what I mean by that is, people will reuse password reuse is a huge issue as far as breach is concerned. Your password for accessing a publication or something very simple should not be the same as your password that you use at the bank. So, what I can tell you is whether it's uh, LastPass or Passlane or Dashlane or any of these things are better than not having something in place. And I'll quickly say the way they work is you have your username, your super secure password that you create, and then you put multi-factor authentication in place on top of a password manager. And you might subscribe to something like this. There are family subscriptions. I have a family subscription to LastPass, and um, what I can say is there's a learning curve, but once you use it for a period of time, a couple of months, you will ask yourself, how did I live without this? It will actually help you logging into sites, etc., and help you maintain and share information. I now share sensitive information with my family members through links on LastPass, and that's a good way to do it. So I'd highly recommend that you consider it. The problem is that passwords are everywhere and people don't take a lot of care with it. And also that password reuse notion. Please, if you're reusing passwords on important financial services sites or otherwise, think about changing that.
Yeah. And I'll add that we use password managers both as an organization and then in our individual household. And it's great because you can set different access levels. So not everyone gets all the passwords. Some of them get certain passwords, some of them get other passwords. I have a teenager who's learning how to access different resources, and he will get access to only the few passwords that he needs in a really, really secure way. So highly, highly recommended. And these are really complex passwords. I think the minimum one is 14 characters, and it's capitals and lowercase and symbols and dashes and you name it. It makes life a lot easier. We all have so many passwords now. And another thing that they do is actually go out to the dark web and identify what passwords of yours that might have been compromised and help prompt you to change them. So it's a really great layer in your cybersecurity defense. It does take some time to set up initially. It's not hard, it's just time consuming. But once it's done, like Tim said, you will never go back. You will wonder how you lived without it.
And I'll just mention that, like I said, LastPass, Dashlane, 1Password, or using the baked-in password manager for Safari or Chrome, that's okay too. Anything like that is better than nothing. But those services, LastPass, Dashlane, 1Password, etc., enable that sharing between individuals, which is very helpful. So we can't go back. Very good to have that stuff. Much better than texting passwords around when you need to share the password to Netflix with someone in your family.
Oh, we
Um,
have one more follow-up question on that, Tim. This individual uses 1Password with complex passwords. Their weak link is the original login. How do you encourage or insist that family members use a complex original login?
Yeah, that's I hate to say it because, it's not something you can necessarily enforce. In our business, what we say is that's a training issue. In other words, you have to convince someone that their password needs to be something lengthy, complex, or a passphrase. Like I live in and love Colorado, or some simple passphrase that you can remember that you can type in. When there are capital letters, numerals, punctuation, it qualifies as a complex password. So if people are having trouble with that, suggest the use of a passphrase. The complexity is great, but I will tell you that the real issue is actually the length of a password and how many digits are in place. That's what creates entropy and makes it more difficult for those passwords to be cracked. So a lengthy passphrase of 15 or 20 characters is also great. So if people are having trouble with that, suggest a passphrase, and you have to bring people along. It kind of defeats the purpose if your super secure password isn't really super secure. So, just a couple other points here. Like we've been saying all along, you want to make sure that you retain a healthy level of skepticism for any inbound communication. So, whether it's a phone call, a text message, email, etc., we should all be quite suspicious of any inbound communication that's asking us for information. Um, we use for communication with our people at our business a secure client portal. I am sure that Comprehensive Wealth Management also does things like that.
Yes.
Emailing secure information or personal identifiable information around is no longer acceptable in any way or form. So, if you receive an email, I, you know, I know sometimes it's a pain in the neck to go through a secure portal, but it's much more secure than adding attachments to an email. The biggest issue in our business is still business email compromise. So you sort of have to assume that anything that you attach to an email, whether you're sending it to your accountant or someone else, could possibly be accessed in a breach of their email. So I have an accountant who says, "Oh, do me a favor, just attach it to an email and send it." And I say, "Nope, send me a link for a secure portal." So keep that in mind. Um, Money movements, if you have the option, I highly recommend that you go to a higher level of security and just make sure that you check the box on providing verbal authorization. That's a gold standard for the business still. And what I can tell you is that may become more difficult in the future, especially as more voice is cloned. Is there a possibility someone could try to clone your voice for verbal authorization on a wire or a money transfer? Yes, there is that possibility, but for the time being, that's the standard, and I would have heightened security on any wiring process you have, whether it's at a bank, a custodian, or a financial services firm.
And add on a question to that, Tim. We had someone here ask, how do I confirm the call or text is from my bank if my card is currently being compromised?
Well, I think again, I hope I'm answering this question correctly because we are seeing a massive influx of fraud from banks. And I'll tell you something else. Stolen cards from mailboxes, which then create a problem. We've seen that create a problem for multiple clients of ours. Someone fishing into their mailbox and pulling out a new card that they've ordered, and then with a minimal information, being able to activate that card. So something else to just be aware of, physical theft is still an issue. But I would say any communication you're not sure of, you have to take that inbound process. Someone's contacting you and contact them. So the number of record should work. The reason we're all saying this now is because caller ID can be spoofed. You can receive a call that says Chase Bank on the caller ID, and then the person gets on and says, "Hi, how are you? Your birth date is this. The last four digits of your account number are this. We're trying to help you secure your account, and we need the following information." That's a hangup, okay? Because people can obtain that information now these days. And so, if someone is attacking you, the number of records should still be good. Your outbound phone call to your institution from the number on the back to the number on the back of your card or statement should be the most secure way of doing it. So if you think you're under attack, by all means, reach out instantly and start talking to someone at that institution and say, "Hey, I think I am under attack here. This is what I received from these people. What should we do? Should we freeze our accounts? Should we, go to a higher level of security?" But that's still the best solution. Turn any inbound process that you're uncertain of into an outbound call to a number of record. So a couple of common scams here that maybe people out here have heard about, but that are sort of frightening. And there's what is commonly called the grandparent scam, which, your child or your grandchild's voice and information is out there and available on social media, and it can be used by AI to make a distress call to you in the middle of the night. "I'm in jail," or "I'm in trouble and I need money immediately. I need you to wire money to me immediately." And this is obviously very scary, but what you really have to do is talk to children and grandchildren about this beforehand, and make sure that they're aware of this possibility. You need to hang up and call your child, your grandchild back on their number. So that's the thing to do is to, again, take that inbound communication and go directly to them. The other thing I'll say is it might be here somewhere in this deck, but what's important is that your family has an emergency word, and you all know that emergency word, and we have that in my family. Okay, so if you're on the phone with someone you're unsure whether is this my son, is this my daughter, you need to be able to say, "What's the emergency word?" And if that person can't produce that word, hang up, call them back. Okay, so just little things like that. But this stuff is very scary. Deepfake videos are becoming more and more common. You can have a complete office setup, a very official look, police badges in the background, looks like a police department, anything like that. So you really have to be careful about this. If you're on a video call, if you've received a link that says join this video call to talk to your financial advisor, it can look quite formal. That person can be almost matched perfectly these days. So again, that's another inbound communication that's questionable. Is your advisor or is someone else going to reach out to you like that out of the blue? Not likely. Maybe it is happening, but what you need to do before you proceed is reach out to them at the number of record. Um, so, and as I've mentioned before, there is so much information floating around there, and there are AI agents attempting breach and gathering information on you. We've given away so much information on social media that someone can call you and provide minimal information that might be very convincing and sound quite official. So I've heard from a number of clients who said, well, the person had my birth date and had the last four digits of my account number, which could have been intended in a breach or an email breach or anywhere along the line. So, you have to sort of assume that some information of yours might be out there and be skeptical with someone coming to you. We've probably all heard about these AI romances where someone actually thinks they're communicating with a person out there and they're talking with an agent or a large language model. It's quite convincing. I don't know whether you use AI tools, but if you talk to Claude or ChatGPT or one of these AI models, you can have a very nice conversation with them. It's quite reasonable and deceptive. So people have actually thought that they're speaking to someone who's interested in them, interested in having a relationship until they ask you for money. But beware of this type of interaction. And, people are lonely. Again, what, fraudsters are trying to do is take advantage of weakness and people who have problems. So be careful of this. Don't send money to someone you've met online ever. And, hope good luck with this stuff. But I will tell you, keep your guard up. Sure, I'll move forward very quickly. And just to let you know, so we're not going to play this video or these things, because we have a time issue, but just know the point of these videos are to illustrate to you how advanced AI tools are, that the deep fake looks actually just like the person, and you can trust that. And if you go online and search if you should go into YouTube and search for examples of AI, you'll find unbelievable things. And just know that it's incredibly convincing these days. And someone could record my video, make a video of me that's quite convincing. And these are things that you have to be aware of. And this is only going to get more real. It's going to fool lots of people. There are certain steps you can take. I think the next slide addresses some of those if you want to move forward. If there's a flat tone, if the cadence is somewhat robotic, if you see faults or problems in the background, if there's blurring on the image, so any imperfections that you might notice in a video, that could be a giveaway that is a synthetic video generated by AI. So I would say be very careful about those type of things. Um, we all know those, but the best thing I can say is anything that makes you suspicious about what you're looking at. And AI tools are imperfect right now. You can see people with six fingers or reflections that don't make sense to you or things like that. So just be very wary of imperfections if you are presented with a video. And that's the main way to look at those things now. That's all being improved over time and made more convincing. So it also has to be about content. What is someone asking you for? So sorry, I won't go through all of these things, but I think you understand. When in doubt, hang up or get off that video call. Go back to that person through a known channel. Okay, just a couple steps. I'll go through this very quickly. If your email is not secured with multi-factor authentication, two-factor authentication, go to your account, go to your profile, go to your security settings, and set up multi-factor authentication. Whether you use your mobile phone for SMS or you use an authenticator for a six-digit code, you have to do this. If you need help with it, make sure you get someone to help you. I say all the time, if you don't have multi-factor authentication in place, your email account or any other account, a social media account, will be breached. You need to talk with your children and say, do you have multi-factor authentication turned on for Facebook, for Twitter, for Instagram, etc.? Never trust caller ID. As I've said before, it can be spoofed. So be very wary of that inbound communication, even if it looks official. This is people, oh, obviously it's Chase Bank calling me. They're telling me I've got a problem and asking for information, asking me to move money. No, that doesn't sound good. Turn that into an outbound process. As I said here, every suspicious contact, someone contacting you, needs to be turned into an outbound call. Financial institutions will never ask you for your password, in communication, in a phone call. That just will not happen. And if someone asks you, I'm sending you a 6-digit code, you need to read it back to me. Don't ever engage in that. That's also behavior where they're trying to get at your account. So, the use of a password manager, we talked about it. I think it's important. The federal government's recommending it for a reason. I'm so shocked, but the federal government's been recommending for 3 years that individuals and families use a password manager. So these are the most important things. Keep these in mind and have a discussion with your family at the dinner table. Make sure they know. Protect your parents. Protect the grandparents. People who are not that tech competent, and make sure you have this discussion.
And Tim, for those who do have multi-factor, but it's set up just through their phone,
Yes.
what do you recommend they prepare or do just in case they lose their phone?
There's always a second method that, when you sign up for multi-factor authentication through Gmail or through something else, you can always provide a second email or a second number. So, for example, with my kids, I always set up my number as a second factor for them. Now, I receive security alerts from my kids during when they log into a new system or things like that, or log into their email on a new system, but that's just fine with me. I want to see that. I often snap a picture of that and send it back to them and say, are you logging into a new system? Is this you? So, you know, you never want to set up just one item for multi-factor authentication. Anytime you can add two numbers, a redundant number, or an email address, you want to do that. But you can always select your primary method. SMS is fine. The most secure is a password generator, 6-code password generator, but SMS is certainly better than nothing, and at a minimum should be on your accounts. Hope that answers that.
Yeah.
Okay. And just some resources. We all know this. Let me tell you, if you're an Apple user, Apple stores, if you have access to one, they're very helpful with security issues. Staples has the Geek Squad. They can also help. If you've made a mistake and fell for the help desk scam and downloaded something onto your machine and said, "Oh, what did I do?" Acknowledge that mistake, shut down your system, bring it in to an expert and let that expert look at it. So that's the thing to do. And we say it all the time in trainings to our clients. If you stub your toe, the real thing is to let people know immediately. That can limit the damage. We're all subject to make a mistake. I see very smart people make mistakes every day. So there are free antivirus software out there. Microsoft machines, Defender is very good. So as long as those are the defaults that are in place, those are pretty good. Apple systems don't have native antivirus. So Malwarebytes, Sophos, those are good names to download onto your Apple system. And I think that is a good idea these days.
Well, as we kind of wrap right before we move into Q&A, just sharing, especially for the clients on the line, what are things that we're doing to make sure we're safeguarding your accounts? We have cybersecurity training regularly throughout the year firm-wide. Anytime anything comes up, even for a client, which sadly we are seeing more and more clients be compromised, we are training on it. We are talking about it. We have protocols if you get compromised. So call us and we will send you all sorts of resources and what phone calls you should be making next in order to secure and lock down accounts that we are not managing. Otherwise, we will absolutely be helping with that process. We do penetration testing and continually review our best practice cybersecurity protocols. We encrypt and protect client information. Tim talked about outbound calls. No one gets to make a request for money from your accounts with us verifying and validating that to known communication sources. And that's one of the ways we're protecting from the deep fakes. We use those secure client portals, which those of you who are clients would know, and hopefully you're logging in and using those resources. And we will always call if we have questions or something seems off. We always will. And it'll be to, again, those known communication sources that you have provided us on your formal client record, not a phone number that got emailed to us from a sketchy email that says you're in Europe somewhere and have lost all of your stuff and could we please wire you funds? We will always make sure we verify. And if anything feels uncomfortable, as Tim said, hang up and call us at the known number, and we'll make sure that we are responsive. So we have a few questions, and we'll get to as many of them as we possibly can. Would having a second line on your phone make any difference, Tim, especially if that second line is layered with extra security?
Well, I can say the answer is yes, but only for a limited amount of time. The more you use that number, the more it gets out there. The more the hotel you stay at asks for your number. If you have a separate dedicated line that you only use for secure communication, the answer would be yes. But the more you use that phone number, the more it's likely to be likely to be attacked. And we're dealing with this all the time. We have clients contacting all the time. I'm receiving robocalls. I receive robocalls almost every day, quite annoying and also impactful, especially if you've had a number for many years. People don't want to change their number because they've had it for many years. So the answer is yes. That second number might afford you some limited protection, especially if you wanted to use it for your close contacts or your family and really control, who that number is sent out to. The real issue is that we use our phones for almost everything these days, that almost every institution is asking for it, that they want to spam us, they want to upsell us with our own phone number information. So in answer to your question, a second line would be helpful if you protected it and only used it for specific purposes. That could solve quite a few problems. So it's an interesting question. I appreciate it, and I think the answer is yes.
Okay. And what about computer generated passwords? Are those safe?
Yes, as long as you know the source, your password managers, like we've mentioned, they all have password generators built in. You can generate a password, click a button, populate that password, and then, or copy it, populate it, and confirm it. So the answer is yes. A known browser that has a password generator, a a password manager, or there are websites, secure websites that actually will generate passwords for you. So generally speaking, yes, they're quite secure. And the reason is not much can take place with a password generator. You're simply going to copy that password and that super secure 16 character complex password and reuse it. As long as you're not giving anything else up, as long as you're not using a password generator site and that then says, log in, give us your credit card information, your name, your authentication, the answer is yes. Most secure if you're using a password generator in conjunction with a password manager that you subscribe to.
And adding on to that, sometimes we have actually seen some recent compromises where the clients use the password generator, but then they saved it into their browser.
Yep.
Don't do that. We had a client who got hacked, and because their passwords were saved in their actual browser for those secure bank sites, they ended up discovering that the hacker opened their browser, logged right in, and was having a party in the bank accounts. So make sure, as Tim suggested, generate the passwords, great, but where you house them after the fact, use that password manager.
Quite important because people will save them on in their notes, in Apple, in their notepad, on Microsoft systems, in their, in their Outlook. So, and if you're going to do that, if you're going to copy out and paste in a password into a notepad, make sure that you clean up after yourself and delete that. So that is very important. You don't want to go to all that trouble and then your notepad is a treasure trove of all your passwords.
Mhm. This was an interesting question that came up. If you go to Apple, if you go to the Geek Squad, how do you know that those employees are going to be ethical and not put something themselves on your computer while you're getting it serviced? Is there a way to check for that after you've come home?
Great question. And what I can tell you is this. Those employees are all background checked. So that's the best protection you have. They're background checked and they're trained. And before I handed over my system, I would ask that question as well. So, that's tricky because anytime you're having a system serviced, it involves a amount of trust. And so, great question to ask. But if you have a problem, you have to sort of make that judgment call. The other thing you can do when you have system problems is have a trusted person. If you have that trusted person, wipe it clean or start again. Apple, that's not a difficult process, but what I can tell you in my experience is the people at the Apple stores and the people that I've encountered with Geek Squad are generally speaking, I believe, trustworthy, and they've all been background checked at a minimum.
Thank you. And last question here. Is it ever safe to save your credit card info to use again at a website, even if you always have to type in your code each time?
Well, it's not wonderful, okay? And that's what I can tell you. A lot of access to credit card information or personal information comes from breach of financial institutions. It's happening all the time. You can pick up the newspaper and see a breach that involves credit card information. And so there is risk there. I'll tell you my personal policy, however much a pain in the neck it is to not have vendors retain my card information. I know it's awful, but here's what I would tell you is if you save that information in a password manager, a LastPass, a Dashlane, a 1Password, when you have to enter that information, that can be a sort of automated process. And you can then select, that goes very quickly. You can select your credit card from LastPass, have that information dropped in, and then say, no, don't retain this information for future payment. So in other words, the password manager also helps speed that process, that gain that you would make from saving your password with a vendor. So I encourage people not to do that, and you can make up for that by using a password manager.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, we appreciate everyone's time today. I think the theme is be aggressively aware of these cybersecurity concerns and talk about it with your family. It's a real threat. It's happening every day. I expect it will be increasing. So any little steps that we can all do to make ourselves less vulnerable are absolutely essential. And a reminder that cybersecurity really is just one piece of a much broader financial picture. And if today's discussion raised questions with clients, with audience members, or if you just have questions in general about your investment accounts and how your plan is structured, we're here as a resource. We have a QR code, phone number, and email that you can reach out to us. Remember, this is outbound, so this is good. This is a cybersecure communication coming from you. We also offer a second opinion service, which is a complimentary 30-minute meeting with the CWM advisor. So if you are interested in having additional discussion, please reach out. Otherwise, thank you so much again for attending and take care.